Hello, everybody, and welcome to the book club. We round off the year, just a few more of these left to go, and I thought I would do another book that I read recently. As I said, I'm trying to do books, a mixture of books that are older and newer. And one of the new books that I read, just published in 2016, is a book by Penn called Presto: How I Made Over £100 Disappear and Other Magical Tales. And it's quite interesting because this is not a book about magic, but at the same time, it is about uh, magic. And there's a lot of stuff that contributes to Penn and Teller's success, their business success, in that has to do with this project that seems like it has nothing to do with their career. So I did want to talk about it because it is interesting. First, a little bit of my history with Penn and Teller before I get into this book. So I first heard about Penn and Teller a few years ago, and this was, let's see, I don't know exactly how long ago, but many years back. I knew that they were magicians, and I found some of their old specials that had been uploaded to the internet from TV shows that they had done. They did a bunch of TV specials back in the day, but probably their biggest project, I think, even to this date, their most popular project, and maybe they had different projects that were more popular. But the one that I'm aware of is Penn and Teller Bullshit. This was a show that was hugely successful. This was like a cultural phenomenon, and this is a show that It came out in 2003, and it ran for 8 seasons, and it was a very good show. It was on Showtime, and every single episode there would be a new topic and they would be debunking stuff, and it was a wonderful show, sort of in the style of magicians debunking pseudoscience, or pseudo just different uh, ideas. And this was not a magic show at all. There was not really magic in it, and it was just about them uh, being skeptics, looking at stuff and presenting it in an entertaining way. And they always, if you were on the show, they had a way of making everybody look crazy. everybody, everybody who appeared on their show, but it wasn't, deceptive. I don't think it was deceptive in the way that they edited it. The people that they interviewed were just pretty much crazy, so it just made for a really entertaining show. And they talked. It's funny now, they go back and they say that some of the stuff they debunked, they actually agree with today, because they debunked a lot of stuff, alternate medicine, uh, self help, environmental hysteria, global warming, et cetera, et cetera. And PETA, they sort of backtrack on some of this stuff, recycling. Anyways, but it was a great show, many episodes. I'm wondering if I saw it all. Maybe I didn't see. I don't know. It's a good show. I should rewatch it, because it's honestly a very good show. So I found that was the time when I was watching this show, because I was a fan of their magic. I thought they were good magicians, very competent, very entertaining, very unique in what they do. But this show, Penn and Teller Bullshit, was a show that made me into a fan. And funnily enough, this was one of the shows that grew their audience. This was a comedy show. It was not really about the subject of magic at all. I mean, you knew they were magicians. Oh, my name is Penn, and this is my partner Teller, and we're magicians, and we're gonna debunk this. Da, da, da. And anyways, it brought them so many viewers to their live show and their other projects. There was a tremendous boost to their career. Why is this relevant when we're talking about a book eventually about weight loss? Because it becomes very important when you understand the business model. But before we go into that, go a little bit further into my story, Penn and Teller. So that was a show that I was a fan of that they did, and then they also did another show after Penn and Teller, which I was not a huge. Uh, I don't think it was very successful. They did a show called. Let's see here. By the way, they pretty much had cameos from everything from the Simpsons to Dancing with the Stars to just everything you could possibly imagine. But when Penn and Teller ended, trying to find the name of the show here. They did a show called Penn and Teller Tell a Lie. That's the name of the show. I remember this. This was a show that was not very long running. This was a 6-part series, and this was for Discovery. And they tried to keep sort of the same model, but I don't know. It was not very popular, but it was like a MythBusters type show. What they were doing. Interesting, not that popular, but especially compared to Bullshit, which was a very popular show. So Penn and Teller always tried to do different stuff throughout their careers. Obviously, they were hosts on Wizard Wars, but uh, anyways, so I'm following their career. A few years ago, I obviously went on Penn and Teller Fool Us, which is a show they're doing now. They've been doing for a few years, and I fooled them on their show, and that was the first time that I met them when I was on stage doing that show, and we became friends after that. So, just a brief history. Why why is it important that this book comes out? It's the same reason why, and this is was shocking to me. I don't follow Penn's podcast all the time, but Penn has this weekly podcast called Penn Sunday School, and on the podcast he talks about what is how do I say this? What is you know he talks about different subjects, and one of the things was in an episode that he mentions, which shocks me, and he probably said this on TV a bunch of times because he talks about Donald Trump. He was on the TV show Celebrity Apprentice, which was obviously hosted by Donald Trump at the time. And he says out of all the TV shows that he did, and all the different stuff that Penn and Teller have done in their career, that was the number one show that helped them in their business. And believe me, they've done a lot of TV shows. And when he elaborates on it, it makes total sense. You have a show, The Apprentice, The Celebrity Apprentice, which is already huge. It has a huge following, and he is on the show. The fans of the show cross over and become his fans. He was also in a cooking show. He said that was also very successful for their career. Why? Because you have people outside of magic who aren't interested in magic. Maybe they've never watched a television program on magic. Maybe they've never seen a real magic show in their whole life. But but they're watching this other show, cooking show. They're watching The Apprentice, uh, and you have a magician, Penn and Teller, who go on those programs. And what happens? That audience crosses over. A percentage of that audience likes Penn Jillette. They like Teller, and they say, "We want to find out more about these guys." They start watching the stuff. Maybe if they're in Vegas, they go see the show, and you have so they said from all the stuff that they did, that was the number one thing that helped their career because it introduced them to an audience that was outside of their normal audience. When you're talking about magic, when you're talking about anything, you have an audience that's automatically your market, like your what we call it your market. And these are the people who are the right age range, they have the right interests, and they're the type of people who are going to support what you do and watch what you do. And that doesn't always cross over to everything. And it's very hard to expand that because let's say, for example, you are, your primary audience is, high school students, and you do a television show for high school students. All of a sudden, you know, you're not gonna have a lot of fans that are in their 30s or 40s. These people are going to be at a different age, a level in life. They're going to have different interests. So you're not going to be able to reach that market with the content that you're producing. But if you were to all of a sudden, let's say you were on one of those shows for teenagers, you're very popular with the teenage crowd. One day you are, I don't know, on some sort of program that's for older people, maybe like a David Suzuki series, or you're an activist for climate change or something like that, and you become popular for it. All of a sudden you get introduced to a new audience, and that audience may go and watch your stuff, maybe they won't, but you have more people that know about you, more people that are following your work, and you have recognition from from a different market, from a different piece of the market. So that was very fascinating to me. And this book, although the book's primary purpose, I think, is to tell the story of how he lost over 100 pounds, um, there's a secondary objective that's very interesting when you see it happening. Weight loss is one of the biggest businesses in North America, probably one of the biggest businesses in the world. Well, in some parts of the world, but definitely in North America, where people have access to food whenever they want it and quantities that surpass their nutritional requirements. So they gain weight, and weight loss is a very popular thing. The weight loss industry is huge. It's in the billions. I don't know. Let's see. Let's Google this. How how much money is the weight loss industry? 72 billion. $72 billion a year in the US. That's a lot of money. That is a lot of money. Uh, $72 billion. There's a $72 billion industry. So I mean, that's for the U.S. That's for the U.S. So that's a lot of money. You have to do the math. It's a lot of money, and there's people who, who spend money on these types of products. So when you're looking at book sales, if you have been, if people know, if you're a celebrity and people have known you as weighing more, you're at a heavier weight, and all of a sudden you're able to lose the weight and advertise it, you can do very, very well. You can do very well with people who wouldn't necessarily know who you are, or they're not necessarily your market, but you have some sort of name recognition in this other area where people are like, oh, maybe people don't know Penn and Teller. But they know the name. Maybe they've never seen the show live. Maybe they've never, been a fan of the TV series, but they know the name Penn and Teller, big names. Same thing with David Copperfield. You say David Copperfield, most people in the U.S. today will if you will say, yeah, that's a magician. Maybe they've never seen his show in Vegas. Maybe they've never seen his TV series, but the name is popular enough that people would know. You know, it's one of those names like Kim Kardashian, or something like that. Celebrity. There's some sort of name recognition, even if you're not a fan, even if you don't watch their programs. Like I know who Kim Kardashian is. I've never watched a television show with her in my whole life, but I know the name because it's in the popular culture. Same thing with Penn and Teller. Same thing with a lot of people. But the idea is, if you can put out a product that uh, goes to the masses, and you already have some sort of name recognition, you're able to capture some of that market and bring them into your niche. And maybe they're not going to be a fan of everything you do, but maybe, maybe look, somebody's trying to lose some weight. They've never seen a Penn and Teller show in their life. They've never watched a magic show, but they saw the book when they were going through one of the bookstores, Barnes and Noble. They buy the book. Maybe they want to lose 10 pounds. They want to fit into their old pants. Their pants are a little tight. They buy the book because they're like, you know what? I've tried everything. It's hard for me do my exercise, my diet. This isn't working for me. Here's this book with this guy who made tremendous losses. Maybe I can, learn a little bit. So they buy the book. They buy the book. They read it. They get some good ideas. They get some good advice. Maybe it works. Maybe it doesn't for them. But whatever. They try it out, and because they read that book, they learn more about Penn Jillette. They learn more about Penn and Teller, their magic shows. They learn about their life a little bit in the book because it's sort of an autobiographical book. It talks about how he gained the weight and how he lost the weight. It's sort of his life and everything. So they read this book, and maybe they're not a huge fan, but they have now they're invested in that character. They have a feeling of personal relationship with that person. They read their book. I mean, it's almost impossible to read somebody's writing, to hear their voice that's been captured and recorded on paper, and not feel some sort of connection to them. So they feel some sort of connection. What happens a few months down the line, maybe a few years? They go to Vegas. They go to Vegas. Maybe there's a bachelor party. Maybe there's a business conference. I don't know. They get to Vegas. What do they have a night free? They have 2 nights free. What are they going to do? Okay, they could see, Britney Spears. They could see this. Oh, what's that? Oh, Penn and Teller are doing their show. Well, I read his book. Let's go see the show. Let's go see the show. Never seen a magic show before. Let's go see the show. And you have a lot of people like that who are coming in from a different industry. It adds up every single year. That money adds up of people who are. It's like a giant funnel. And it's very wide on the top, and the funnel's not always gonna. The funnel gets smaller as you go down. When you go down, you're at that selling point where people are actually paying to see you. So, I mean, top of the funnel, you have people reading your book. Maybe they paid, maybe they didn't pay. But as you get down, that audience becomes smaller. You have people giving you more money. So, a book like this and any type of book is, I think, very smart for capturing people who are outside of your audience and bringing them in. And this is not just in magic. This can be in any industry. Darren Brown did something similar recently. He wrote a book called Happy, which we've talked about in this book club. And the book Happy was a history of happiness and, practical tips and sort of his story of happiness in his life and mental strategies, emotional strategies for having somewhat control over the happiness in your life. And so, same thing. The self-help market, what they call the self-help market, the psychology, the amateur psychology market, the mental health market, is the happiness market. There's a market for happiness. It's a big market. And Darren Brown has many people who don't know who he is. Now he has more people sort of knowing him in the U.S. because of Netflix, but for a long time he wasn't known in the U.S. Primarily known in the U.K. for his shows and television programs, and but then he has his credentials. So then, even if people don't know who he is, his credentials are solid. Somebody looks up Darren Brown. Oh, there's this book called Happy by Darren Brown. I don't know who Darren Brown is. Okay, what do? They say, okay, he's created all these programs about psychology, about the mind, about influence, suggestion, persuasion, uh, mental states, hypnosis. Okay, the guy might have some idea of what he's talking about, and they enter that relationship with him through reading his book, and they were looking for a book to discuss their level of happiness, and they end up they end up then becoming a fan. Maybe they watch his television shows. Maybe they buy his other books. Maybe they spend money. He's doing a show on Broadway, or he's doing shows in London. Maybe they go over, they see his show. There's money coming in that way. And the more people, the more eyes you have on you, the more people you have interest in your work. Obviously, that is very monetizable. So the idea, which is very brilliant, and I don't think people generally understand this, is to have more than one market. Because when you have more than one market, you have people coming in, and they are sort of entering that relationship with you. Maybe they don't know who you are to begin with, but they feel like they get to know you. As long as the product is solid, and the book is good, or whatever it is good, you have people who are slowly converted into fans. And maybe they're not. Maybe they'll never be a fan of yours, really. Maybe somebody will read the book and they'll never go see the magic show. Maybe they won't. But you have a chance of conversion. You have a chance of conversion, multiple lines. You have access to a person who might never give you business otherwise. And many times, I don't know what the percentage would be, because you'd have to be a lot, you'd have to be a lot better at math than I am. But you have people who are converting into paying customers, and they're making money from that. So a book like this, even though it seems like it has nothing to do with magic, oh, why is Penn Jillette writing this book? How I made my weight disappear, made 100 pounds disappear. Oh, he's a magician. He made 100 pounds. Why? Because it's good for business, and he does want to share a story. So let's, with that out of the way, let's get into the book. Um, so Penn Jillette is a really big guy. No matter how you want to cut it, he's just a physically large guy. He's 6'6", which is 1.98 meters in height. He's a massive guy. When you see him in person, he's a massive guy. And for a very long time, when you are that big, by the way, it's not hard to weigh a lot because you have so much bone density, you have so much mass. You're just big. You have a big appetite. And you see tall people who are really skinny. You see tall people who are well proportioned, and you see tall people who are overweight. But he got into this habit of eating more, and it became sort of a character thing for him, where it was like, yeah, he's already this massive guy. He doesn't really have self-control in eating. He says all this in the book, and anytime that anybody, mentions something about his weight, or about, how much he eats or how unhealthy he eats, he sort of blocks it out and just says like, yeah, this is who I am. Even though that's not who he really is. It's just a characteristic of him, a physical characteristic, one that he's imposed on himself through his free will and choices. He excuses it in his mind by saying, that is a choice. This is my character. This is who I am. This is who I am. Accept me. Accept every part of me, even though it's not that healthy. So he had been living with the weight for very long time, and he was reaching his 60th birthday, getting up there, and he weighed over 330 pounds. Like he wasn't round. He wasn't a circle, but 330 pounds is a lot of weight. It's a lot of weight for a human being. And he had systolic blood pressure reading of over 200. It was, they couldn't even get reliable results because his blood pressure was so high, and it was giving him health scares. and especially at that age, even before that age, people start having, high blood pressure, diabetes, problems with cholesterol, problems with their heart, even before that age. And he was really pushing it. Having no energy, he said that it was, his kids wanted to play with him, go out, just playing with the kids. Doesn't really matter what activity you're doing. He's getting exhausted, not having the energy, even though he had the time, he has the money. He couldn't enjoy things in his life that he wanted to enjoy because of his weight, which was too high for him to have a healthy, relationship and engage. And also, affected his mood, all these things that he lists through his book. And, you know, he goes through the whole process of how he was sort of how he's in denial about it, how he didn't want to change it. And then he, him realizing that he wants to actually be there for his kids. He wants to grow up. He wants to be alive. He wants to walk them down the wedding aisle. He wants to do all this stuff. And um so he goes through this whole story of, okay, now he looks at the different stuff that he's tried, what's worked, what didn't work. It's funny, he says that he says he said he was 1/3 of the size of a cow. He calculated the weight of a cow. He said he was 1/3 size of a cow, which is quite remarkable. Um, so he's doing all these. He's he's doing research on all these diets. This doesn't work for him. This doesn't work for him. He needs to have energy for shows. He doesn't. He's also sort of in. It's almost like a marriage. Such a strong business relationship with his partner Teller, and they have tried their best never to cancel a show in their career. I think they had to cancel a few shows years ago because Teller hurt his back. But they have this thing where it's like they're very proud of never having to cancel shows. They keep that as a selling point that the show must go on. They'll always do their best to put on the show. So he didn't want to do anything that was damaging to the show. He didn't want to do some extreme diet that would leave him with no energy. The show's compromised, because he's not being able to perform well. Also, he had concerns in terms of business. He's had this image, this large guy for so many years. How are people going to take it with him losing all this weight? And to be honest, the transformation was very remarkable. I wasn't because he lost the weight fast as well. And you have this picture of Penn Jillette in your mind because if you're like me and you've seen his TV shows, you've seen his magic over the years, and then all of a sudden you see him, he's lost over 100 pounds. You look at it, it is shocking. It is shocking. Uh, if you just Google Penn Jillette before and after, you'll see the weight loss. It's mind-boggling. It's it's totally. It looks like a totally different guy. His face is different. His neck is like just everything. Everything is completely different. And yeah, it's kind of a remarkable transformation when you see him. But he looks totally different. I remember when I first saw his face and like him with having lost the weight and he's holding the pants up and all the stuff. And you're looking at it and you're like, this is incredible. Um, so the whole book is his story to getting to that point of meeting this guy, called Ray Cray Ray. I forget the guy's name. Ray Chronos or something. Chronays. You can find it out in the book. And this is a guy who is interested in a lot of stuff. He's like, you know, I don't know if he's a professional scientist or an amateur scientist, but he's created this program where all you do is you basically eat potatoes. You're not allowed to eat anything other than potatoes, and um, you're not really allowed to put toppings on the potatoes like salt and all that stuff. I think you're allowed on maybe not all the time, but sometimes to put some like hot sauce or something if it's not like a calorie filled sauce. You're allowed to put some of that, but it was just this idea of cutting out the taste aspect of food. So we're going to give you potatoes. Historically, potatoes have been used in times of famine to keep people alive. You read about the different famines in the world. Potatoes have a lot of nutrients, and you can pretty much live off of potatoes. I don't think you would want to because you're missing some vitamins and stuff that you need to supplement. But in terms of what they provide for you, there's a lot of uh, substance in them and vitamins. You could live off them. Uh, you wouldn't want to, but it. So, and the whole thing about a potato is he talks about it like he's never eaten a potato before, just a potato. It's always had to be like mashed potato with milk and butter and this and gravy. And if you just eat a potato by itself, you are having to engage with this, with this, you know, with this simple food substance that doesn't have all these crazy tastes. You just have to sit down, eat it, and you know, eating something as plain as a potato. At first, it seems like there's something wrong with it. If you're used to stuff having so much flavor, you sit down and you're eating a potato. It's so unappealing. And so this is what he does, and he talks about how it's literally reprogramming his brain so that he's able to eat when he's hungry for the nutrients. He's not eating for any other reason. He's not eating like, you go to a restaurant, okay, you want this and you want this. You're eating for the flavor. You're eating for this. Somebody invites you to dinner. There's snacks. There's drinks. You know, you're getting all these calories that you don't need. Everything. Maybe you're not even hungry. Maybe you already ate, but it's like, okay, this person invited you. You're talking about business over dinner, and you just get into this habit of just eating and eating and eating, completely unhealthy, completely bad for you. So he talks about going back to this basic idea of just eating a potato. And quite incredibly, in the first 83 days, he loses 74 and a half pounds, which is about a pound a day, as 24.4% of his body weight. And he can't believe it. He can't believe that this thing is working. Um, and he's proud of himself. When you start to do something and you are hitting goals, people don't realize you're always hitting goals along the way of doing stuff. You're never really just doing stuff in the dark. With some stuff like weight loss is very clear because you can actually step on a scale and uh, you have a number that you can rely on, that you can measure, that you can record, and there's a process there. But that's how it is in life and everything. So he's just talking about like this feeling of accomplishment and how he, how he, how he used to get sick, because he has these cheat days once every, I forget how often it is, but he has these cheat days. So I think his first cheat day, he talks about his cheat days and where he's able to eat, just all sorts of food. So what does he do? He goes back to eating the junk that he's used to, and he talks about how it made him like feel totally disgusted in it, like just physically sick, because your body doesn't need all these chemically processed and enhanced foods. And when your body cleanses, you know, all that stuff out, you all of a sudden, when it's reintroduced into your body, you won't feel right. One of my friends told me that when they went on their first tour to China, they were only eating Chinese cuisine, which is not rich in a lot of stuff that we have rich in richness here in the West. And they said when they came home and they started eating regular food again, their regular diet, they were just, they felt everything was so greasy and this and this, just because of totally different ingredients and different approach to um, to making food and eating food. So uh, yeah, and my friend had that experience. Penn also had this experience. This is not an experience I had in my life, because I always like to mix the healthy with the unhealthy. I like to enjoy uh, my life, but I I work hard at the same time so that I am not too unhealthy. I should be more healthy though. But anyways, so the whole process is about him losing this weight. It's an incredible story, and also the feedback of it, the commentary from the friends and the media, people lying about him, uh, false accusations. Um, there, there, there have been different controversies about how how he lost the weight, and some people have claimed that he's lying, that he didn't lose the weight this way. He maintains, and I've heard it from, I won't name names, but I've heard different stories from people within magic who don't believe Penn Jillette's story about how he lost weight. Uh, Without going into any detail, I've heard different stuff. But when you read the book, it seems very plausible. I think it is actually true that he lost the weight from eating these potatoes. Uh, because when you're eating such a simple food, you're not eating it for the taste. You don't really eat unless you're hungry, and um, because you don't get anything out of eating. Like right now, I'm not physically hungry, but am I going to eat? Yeah, I'm going to eat because I know I need some energy for the day. Do I really need the energy? My body probably has enough energy to go through a few days without eating, but you want to eat. Okay, what's going to be for lunch? What's going to be? You start looking through your kitchen. Okay, oh, there's this. Maybe I can, you know, start looking at the food. And if you fall into bad habits, and if you start picking up bad patterns and they form into bad habits, it's very easy to spiral out of control, especially when we're talking about weight, because there's so many things involved in terms of your lifestyle, in terms of your metabolism, your physical age, the way that your body's uh, chemical balance. There's so many things that are a part of it, that if you do get into the place where you have bad habits, it's very easy. I see people all the time where it's like, they consistently, like, I've known them for years, and they gain like 10 pounds a year. And it's like, okay, the first year, not that noticeable. Second year, okay, they gain some weight. Third year, they gain some more weight, and then it just goes like up and up and up. And you can, honestly, you can be overweight and still be healthy. You can. Uh, there's some there's a very famous martial artist who's extremely active, extremely physically in shape, like strong and flexible and everything. You could see him. Just incredible guy. Sammo Hung, uh, starred in a lot of movies. Uh, and you can be heavier and still be in good shape, be healthy. But what happens? Usually, the people who are heavier, probably it's because of bad habits, which include a lack of physical fitness, and also gaining the weight through unhealthy food choices. Let's be honest about it. It's not all uh, you know it's not all these guys are world class martial artists. Some of the guys at the dojos that you see have pretty big bellies and they claim to have black belts. But uh, anyways, I don't want to make any jokes. Yeah, I mean, you whatever weight you are at, you can be healthy at many weights. Is the important thing is being healthy and having a quality of life that you can enjoy. So it is heartbreaking when you read the book and you hear about Penn Jillette's life, and it's like just things that even on stage, designing in a certain way. So he's like not out of breath. Like he's not out of breath. Like if he has to before when he had to walk from one stage to the other during the show, he talks about it in the book. It's unbelievable that they'd set up the show so that he didn't have to run around the theater so much, so that he wouldn't be out of breath. um, and it impacts the show, and impacts you can't play with your kids. Your kids want to play with you, and you're telling kids, yeah, let's take a break, let's take it easy, because you can't physically do it. It's sad because you end up missing out on a lot of stuff and lowering the quality of a lot of experiences. So hearing Penn tell this honest story, I think was quite inspiring. And I really do hope the diet works. I hope people get something out of it. And it was a fun book to read because you find out sort of about like just Penn Jillette behind the scenes, and he's one of those guys who really gives the audience a fairly large look behind the scenes. He has a weekly podcast. He has different stuff where he's very open, and it is very cool for the fans of his because they get to connect with this guy who's made his career and what he's doing, and you know they can relate to them because if you look at the statistics of obesity in America, quite a large number of people are obese or they have some sort of issues related to their weight. And having a guy who's so popular be honest, like literally just sit down and say, look, this was my mindset. I was lying to everybody. I was lying to the doctor. I was lying to my family. I was lying to my my business partners. I was extremely unhealthy and I was out of control and I wasn't living the life that I wanted to live. And being able to admit that to yourself and to other people, and then taking steps to go in the other direction and resolve it, I think is a very good thing. It's a very inspiring thing. And to hear his story, how he did it, why he did it, it's an incredible book. It's an incredible book, and I very much enjoyed it. Even though, yeah, and I also learned a lot because there was a lot of stuff about weight and health and different stuff that I didn't know. And it's a mixture. He mixes his views on sex, religion. There's pop culture. He hangs out with different celebrities and stuff. He tells these funny stories of like going to the restaurants and ordering a potato, and like they can't just give him a potato because the only potatoes they have are like deep fried or like you know all what do you mean you want a potato? You want French fries? We got French fries. We can't just give you a potato. And he's like, just give me a potato. You boil the potato, you bake the potato. Can you just heat up the potato? Like just telling these funny stories of going to restaurants with his friends, family, celebrities, and It is just very interesting. And Penn Jillette is I disagree with a lot of his worldview personally, and his opinion on things I disagree with a lot, but I do like him a lot and I respect him a lot, and it's a great book. So I would very much recommend it. And hopefully, you guys learned a little bit something about uh, that idea of taking something that is not your market. Your market is your magician. You're this, you're that, you whatever it is, and then having another thing that you write about, and then crossing over. Very smart from a business standpoint. Very interesting, um, and very interesting comments from Penn Jillette as well. So I would highly suggest that you check it out, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Thank you for watching. Have a nice day.